so you can read all about it. Well, they've read all about it. We've got two political editors. The political editor for the Daily Express, that is Sam Lister, and the political editor from the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Mr. Nigel Nelson. Nigel, it's the front page of the Times. We're going to feature, first of all, half of Conservative voters want energy companies to be nationalised.
Yes, and quite right too. It's 40% of them, and it goes up to about 53% in red wall seats. And that won't provide an answer to the problem we're facing at the moment, but in the long term I think it's probably right that if you have a public service which is there for the public good, it should be in public control. And I think that applies to trains, buses. It would be much better if the state was in charge rather than private business, and then it would become a completely not-for-profit operation.
Except they'll scream that they're not making profit, and it's the energy, I don't know the difference here, the energy, they're the energy suppliers, so it's the energy producers apparently are making all the money, the people that get the oil and gas.
The wholesalers, the wholesalers basically, yeah. So, you know, you're absolutely right. At the moment, obviously, that they're not making anything out of it. So it's the wholesale gas prices that are the problem, which leads to the price cap and the mess we're in at the moment. So it wouldn't change the way you actually buy your energy, but it might change the way that it's distributed. And it just seems to me, if you've got nationalised industries, you know they're actually operating on behalf of the public.
Well, but do you though? I mean, we look at the state of the NHS, and we had Malcolm Grimstone, the energy expert, this morning saying that then it would be going into competition with other services that the government is trying to fund, and if they were to buy out the energy companies at this point when they're extremely wealthy, that would be the most expensive time to renationalise them. It would cost taxpayers a great deal of money to be buying them out.
Yes, it would, and I'm not suggesting we do this tomorrow. I think you've got to get over this particular crisis now. I just think as a principle, that is the way forward, and it is really interesting because normally Tories are against this kind of thing. Margaret Thatcher was very popular when she privatised all the utilities back in the 70s and 80s. So it's not something for now, but the idea that people are moving towards it means it could be something for the future.
Right. Is Sam Lister something for the future? Green energy. Johnson's sticking his nose in this week, and he's basically saying, don't give up on green energy. Easy for him to say. He won't have to deliver on the policies and how this is pinching people's pockets, but a brave statement, don't give up on green energy.
Yeah, and like you say, he doesn't have to deliver it, so you can't, he doesn't have to make this happen. Liz Truss, she says she's committed to the net zero target of 2050, but she's been very clear that she doesn't want to clobber people in the process, and obviously all the kind of low-hanging fruit has already been picked, and so you do get into the more difficult areas where you're trying to make people have heat pumps and things like that, and also, it does cost people money. So, but I think there is always this fundamental problem, isn't there, where actually governments are very short-term. He is talking about the long term. We do need to think about the long term. We do need to look at nuclear. He's talking about nuclear. Wilverby, for example, in North Wales, 15 years ago they were talking about creating Wilverby, which is a new nuclear power station in North Wales. They're still talking about it. Now, governments, this is the problem, governments last 4 to 5 years, they're only ever thinking about the short-term issues. But I think on the wider point, the 2050 target, I think it's very hard to sell it to people in this country when you've got China on 2060 and not even a committed target, a kind of loose aspiration to meet 2060. I don't think people here want to go through the pain when they can see other countries like China.
Well, there is going to be pain, and green taxes are part of that pain. I don't think, Nigel, people even realise what pain could be in store for them. And Isabel and I were talking during the break. It is businesses and services and high street and takeaway companies and cinemas and restaurants and goodness knows what. How do these people afford their bills? Because when they can't afford to turn on their deep fat fryers and their ovens and whatever, that's suddenly going to dry up a lot of options.
That's right. And the trouble there is, of course, their energy bills aren't capped at all.
It's nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're paying full price for that. There was a pub mentioned yesterday where they've been paying 15p a unit for their energy, and it now goes up to 97p.
Yeah.
So this kind of thing will put them out of business. So when it comes down to the support that comes through, it's not just for individuals. You've got to start doing that support for business as well. The question obviously is the best way of doing it, whether you do it through VAT, whether you do it through business rates, but certainly they're going to need a helping hand. I mean, we're in a kind of COVID-style emergency now, and the same kind of money is going to have to be pumped out to go and deal with that.
But we're also dealing with the consequences of having dished out those huge wadges of cash during that crisis.
Yeah.
You just think we're just kicking the problem further down the road for the next generation. It really is. In my lifetime, I can't remember a time really more sort of worrying when you look to the future. I do think on the whole net zero thing, I think it could be one of the silver linings of this whole crisis, though, that actually as people decide tragically that they may not be able to heat their homes this winter, there could be some unintended green consequences that come out of all of it.
Well, there are things like, I remember in the 80s, there was this whole thing about lighting up buildings in city centres, leaving showrooms lit up of a night and lighting up the front on, and you actually got a grant from the government to put floodlights in front of your building. I mean, bear in mind, this didn't happen in the 70s and in the early 80s, so therefore, we could get used to it. There's so many things we're overindulgent in, we're soft with, and we don't need to be doing it.
I mean, I have a smart meter, and I have to say it does work, because when you look at it ticking round, it's terrifying, and it does make you go around and unplug things.
Well, when I put the toaster on, and my smart meter suddenly goes into the red. Yes.
And the washing machine,
the dryer, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I also heard a crazy case study talking about businesses that can't, obviously they don't have this price cap. Over the weekend, I think it's in Essex, producer of peppers that we all eat and enjoy, and they have all these greenhouses that they have to heat throughout the winter. It costs them £900,000 a year per winter to heat. They make a profit of 5 million, so about 1 million of it goes on their heating bill. That's going to now go up to 15 million. Simply cannot afford to get through the winter.
Right, Sam. We're going to be talking about sewage here, and this is another farce. These utility companies, these water companies. The head of Britain's Environment Agency says, so he's on the government side, right? And he says we've got to get used to drinking recycled loo water.
Oh, it's very yucky. I don't want to put your viewers off watching this morning, but this is Sir James Bevan. He's the head of the Environment Agency. He says that actually the severe temperatures we've had this summer, if we have a particularly bad winter as well, the drought's going to go on for quite some time. But he's talking more long term actually, and he's saying this is something we're going to have to sort out. And one of the options he puts forward is to recycle, essentially loo water.
I mean, isn't all water essentially recycled?
I'm sure it is. This is a more direct way from your loo to your tub. I'm not quite sure of the science.
Well, I'll tell you something. We have the greenest garden in our street, and I'm sure I'm going to be arrested for it or something. And we have sprinklers and things. It's all brown water. It's all recycled water. It all goes into a big tank every time it rains, and then when we want, we can spray it around the garden. But otherwise it'd be water that would have gone to waste. The trouble with Mr. Head of the Environment Agency, what he should be concentrating on is there hasn't been a single reservoir dug in this country for 31 years, number one. So if you dig a hole, you catch water, and there's lots and lots of water that's wasted and drains off. And all those people who say, not in my backyard, why would you object to a reservoir? There's a lot of people object to reservoirs in their area, but I would have thought
they're lovely.
Boats, recreational.
Well, he actually makes the point that about exactly what you said, and he says actually the Environment Agency is shifting its position now to be pro-reservoir.
Yes.
So we've had this decades of no reservoirs being built. Now they're saying actually reservoirs are the right thing to do. It's actually good for wildlife. It's obviously good for water supplies. And you think these things come in and out of fashion, it's just
turn
crazy,
the lights off. Dig some reservoirs. Sorting the world's problems this morning.
Isn't we put the question out there, isn't what we really need is not a democracy but a benign dictatorship?
Done by Eamonn.
Like
You're
Dubai or
volunteering.
something where they say, we're going to have a road through there, and they just do it, it happens. And that's
make James Bevan drink the first glass of lavatory water, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
Well, the idea of it. We all have moobs, Nigel, because of estrogen in the water.
No, that's not why men have
Is
moves.
that right? Is that, I didn't know that was the cause. Just old age.
It's a good excuse.
No, look, I just pulled this out of my pocket here, right? I am a man that carries cash.
Oh, don't tell everyone that.
My
Get
father,
mugged on the way home.
my father carried cash. I always have cash. Ruth likes me because of the size of my wad. I always have a wad of cash, which makes me attractive, apparently. Now, I find that I carry it. I'm having less need of it, but I carry it to pay, when I'm abroad especially, to tip people, taxi drivers and all that sort of thing. But the idea, Nigel, is now that we are moving at a very fast rate towards a cashless society.
Yes, and according to the Express, the campaigners reckon we'll be there by 2027, which is just around the corner. So we've all used less cash since the pandemic. We all started using our card. And the real problem with that is that you start not getting access to cash anymore if you don't use it. So the ATMs are disappearing. It's much more difficult to find it. Like you, I carry cash around, and it seems to stay in the wallet for an awful lot longer than it used to. The difficulty really is for people who are the elderly and the vulnerable. If you want to keep control of your finances, it's much easier to do it with a wad of cash, which you can see how it disappears, than clicking a credit card constantly on a machine. I've no idea what I spend during a day, because by the end of it, I've done the credit card, and then it becomes a surprise that suddenly an awful lot of money has disappeared. But you don't check along the way, if you're doing it with a credit card, wad of cash, you'll know how much you're losing.
Except then you're taken by surprise, Sam, that you then go to get a haircut at the Turkish barber. They take nothing but cash, none of them, only cash, or the kebab shop. I mean, I've often brought Mrs.
I don't go to either very often.
Well, my wife is a bit
But at the same time.
intoxicated, and she comes back from a function. A woman whose body is a temple, suddenly when she's got a few drinks in her, she goes, I want a kebab.
She's actually pointed this one out to me. Is it in Putney or something? I can't remember where it is. The kebab shop of
Fulham,
choice.
Fulham,
We're really all Ruth's secrets.
And the thing is, she's always, I could have a kebab. The only time you can get a kebab is with cash as well.
But I have to say, I very rarely use cash. I am one
You
of
don't eat
those.
kebabs then?
I don't eat kebabs. Well, maybe on a night out, but I'll find somebody else to pay for it for me. I only ever really use my card. I did have occasion this summer to try and get some cash, a bag of 20p's I was after for various tedious reasons. And I went into the local bank and they said, oh, we don't keep change, we only have notes. And that was an actual bank, they don't even have cash. So,
It's a tedious reason, whatever you're going to explain to me. People try and get rid of 20p's.
Yeah.
They save them and put them in a bank. You're the only person I know that's looking to get them back
we
the other
had
way.
a little camping holiday in Devon and you needed 20p's for the campsite, for the showers.
Yeah, but I just wanted to know why. Very good, very good.
Right, can we talk about Princess Diana, Sam? This is a story in the front of the Mirror. Oh, Phil, maybe I should go to you, Nigel. It's one of yours. But let's talk about this. The Diana death car owner says he wants his £10 million limo back.
It's oh blimey, you do think, poor Princess Diana, it's the anniversary this week of her death and still people are trying to make money out of her. Essentially, the owner of the limousine company, the car that was involved, he thinks the limo is worth £10 million. He says he wants it to go into a US museum as a kind of mark of
That
honour.
heap of scrap that literally where she lost her life.
Yeah, who would want to go and see that? I just think that's so macabre. And the fact that he wants to kind of sell it off and make this money, I just think, let her rest in peace, blimey.
And her Ford Escort sold for what, $350,000?
I think it was 650, wasn't it?
$650 is a huge amount of money anyway. Over the weekend.
Yeah,
for that.
but it's 25 years on, people are still making money out of Princess Di or trying
Awful.
to.
Guys, thank you very much indeed. We say goodbye to Nigel and Sam. They're going to be back in 40 minutes' time.